So imagine you open an article and it talks about which suburbs have the most reported crime or hijackings in South Africa. And down Malcolm Libera writes about all the different suburbs and the hijacking hotspots. And it sticks out to me immediately, Midrand Gauteng. And now there are alarm bells in my mind. And it goes on to talk about how Ivory Park has been identified as seeing the most hijackings in the first 3 months of 2025. This is according to the South African Police Service's latest quarterly crime statistics for the fourth quarter, which I'm sure you heard a lot about with Dr. Ndlozi and Ntate Mqunu, our police minister, yesterday on their show. And why then, with such a significant amount of cars being hijacked over the last 3 months, 4,533, which in a land where we hear billions are being stolen and we hear hundreds are being killed, 4,533 may not sound a lot. But if you think about one suburb, one area, over 4,000 hijackings in that area. I think that it's quite incredible. The number worsens when you include unreported incidents in the latest Victims of Crime survey, which looks at crimes through the victim's experience, including a significant number of crimes that go unreported in South Africa. Let's bring our guest on now, who is Stan Bezuidenhout, road traffic risk specialist, court expert, and former specialist reservist, Class C, in the South African Police. From IBF Investigations, you can give us a call as well on 0861987000. Stan, thank you for your time this afternoon.
Anna, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
So, 4,533 hijackings in just 3 months. That's a top-line concern. Does this reflect how things are really on the ground? Do you think that underreporting is happening?
Well, the biggest problem, I think, with regards to all this is that we have to understand that the global statistics have reduced. There's been less hijackings in the whole of South Africa, but horrible increases in specific areas. And you do get these kinds of things. You get trends. It's almost like a local gang starts operating in an area. Oh. They open a niche. We had this in the Western Cape with an absolute rash of hijackings. You know what they do there? They'll confront let's say these shuttle buses for companies. They'll hold the driver hostage. They'll strip his whole vehicle and they'll actually give him his keys back to his stripped vehicle and tell him to drive to the police station. Now, that's classified as a hijacking, but it's actually more theft of parts because it's actually a complicated case because he was, in fact, held hostage, but he was released and his car was returned to him. It's very, very... The crime trends in South Africa are just evolving all the time.
All right, so it seems that the trend right now is in Ivory Park, and that's come
Absolutely.
out as a leading hotspot. Talk to us about what you imagine is occurring at the moment to make the area either attractive to criminals, or is it gang-related? Do we know?
Okay, so I think that it's actually multifaceted. The first reason why you have a crime spike in an area is often because there's a change in law enforcement dynamics. Either there's been a resource challenge within the police services, or there's been patrols or attention on other kinds of crimes, or there's perhaps a number of detectives on holiday and they're not able to address properly. You'd have to look over longer trends. But then also you might find that there's a higher density of people. Tembisa is right next door.
Yeah.
It's an informal settlement type environment. You have natural escalation of crime. Perhaps the criminals have been moved from other areas. Perhaps they were in Atteridgeville before, and an increase in law enforcement there has forced them to seek greener pastures in other areas. And then also it might be that if the crime generally stays fairly low, the people also get complacent and start getting less sensitive. and they are literally surprised more easily by the criminal aspects in that area.
Sure. Okay, so that does make a lot of sense. All of these factors working together, and you are really somebody who has experience in both of these kind of areas, in policing and in forensic traffic lists. So, or risk rather. So, talk to me about patterns, statistics, how these crimes are executed.
So what we see a lot of in South Africa is most hijackings of private vehicles happen close to or at the homes of people. So what happens is you've got a very high number of hijackings that happen in an area specifically like this now, where let's call it a crew is operating, and they kind of find a beautiful little model where they follow somebody, trap them at the gate, hijack the vehicle. Now keep in mind that opportunistic crime, hijackers that just are out to try and find cars for the parts and sell it, is one thing, but you do often get complex cross-border syndicates, especially when they have trends with certain types of vehicles. There might be a sudden spike in demand for Toyotas or Volkswagens, or now for Chinese vehicles. Now, people ask, what would they do with the Chinese vehicles? It's simple. There's a huge demand for parts. Right now in South Africa, most of the car manufacturers have huge backlogs and huge problems getting parts into the country to an adequate volume. I know for a fact that you can easily wait for up to 3 months for parts. So if you can find it on the so-called grey or literally the black market, it's easier for you to buy a headlight that you can get within a week for half the price than you would if you can get one from the dealer that has to wait for stock from another country.
Oh my goodness. So again, another aspect of this to ensure that there are clients for all of these hijacked parts and vehicles. There's always a debate, Stan, whether the Metro Cops or South African Police Services are doing enough. So I wonder what your assessment of the current policing strategy around hijacks is. What's working, what's not working?
I can tell you right now what my opinion is. Our whole law enforcement model is far too reactive. There's not much done in South Africa anymore with regards to intelligence-driven operations, counterinsurgency operations, special operations. I mean, even just during my time in the police in the Western Cape, we ran an operation for months just in response to illegal street racing. And what I find is that typically there's this issue of resources. We cannot have officers running around for months on end trying to anticipate where crimes will happen while other crimes are actually happening. So it's kind of, we can't blame them. They're playing catch up. They've got murders, they've got rapes, they've got robberies, they've got hijackings. And you don't have specialized units working just on that. You have a detective with 200 or 300 or 400 dockets on his desk, literally just playing catch up all the time. So you will have a decline in efficiency as far as the law enforcement dynamic is concerned.
I mean, when do we move to technology when it comes to the police services? Why are we still in an era where dockets can get lost?
Funny that you say that. I've just heard from several attorneys already that in the criminal environment where attorneys get clients that are charged criminally, they've seen an enormous drop in the number of cases, and many have suggested that these trends with so-called selling of dockets, losing of dockets, corruption, etc. I don't understand for the life of me how we can be in 2025 and a detective in Cape Town that has a very particular kind of murder cannot go onto a system and see whether a similar murder has been committed in another part of the country to detect some kind of serial murder dynamic. We are so disconnected and so paper-based that I think it's a challenge, and it won't be overcome unless there's some kind of intentional will from the powers that be to make that happen.
It's very, very bizarre. Every time I go to the police station and you're filling in and it's on a cardboard piece of it just doesn't make sense when the world has moved on. Can we talk about the criminals' favorite cars? Now, every now and then a list will come out and we know, right? Top of that list will be Toyota, whatever model it is. VW is often top of that list. I know BMW is often top of that list. But now even Chinese models like Haval and Chery are being targeted. Is this purely about parts? Are there bigger networks at play? What do you know?
I think it's purely about volume. The cars that sell the best, the cars that are on the roads more often, are damaged more often, their parts are needed more often. that demand creates a supply and demand dynamic, so the prices of those parts go up. When the prices go up, there's a need to compensate for that, and you'll find an increase. And specifically, for instance, you get unique little trends that come out. Like at a stage, there were so many Golf GTIs that had their headlights stolen. I mean, at some dealerships, the criminals would come in and steal like 40 cars' headlights in a single setting, in a single session, and they literally just grab them and yank them out of the car. So as criminals find out there are certain parts, certain cars, certain components that are easily accessed, found, sold, but there's an immediately available market for, you'll find those increases. And as these Chinese models come into the country and they become more desirable, they get used more often, damaged more often, and therefore you need parts more often. So I think it's kind of a natural trend rather than where you get those specific and intentional cases. We had some years ago like 15 Toyota Hilux vehicles hijacked in a single night. Then it was based on, interestingly enough, a specific government order in another country where people were trying to find vehicles quickly to sell off as new vehicles.
Sure. So even with these Chinese models coming in, it almost doesn't matter about what the model is. If the volume and the need blows up, then your vehicle is on the list. That's it.
Absolutely. I mean, at the stage, there wasn't much crime or much corruption or much exploitation on social media. And as social media became more and more popular, criminals moved onto the platform and started exploiting weaknesses within that.
Sure. Let's talk about prevention. Ordinary drivers to reduce their risk. I mean, now I know all who are in Ivory Park or surrounds will be hyper alert at this time. What do we do, especially living in or traveling through a hotspot area? I know you talk about the specific time, coming in or out of your home. What can we do to be a bit more vigilant and maybe prevent this from happening to us?
The first and most important thing that I cannot stress enough is people must absolutely stop living under the total illusion that because it's never happened, it can never happen. We hear that all the time. No, we're lucky. We haven't had it here. No, we're lucky. It never happens here. That's the first problem. Except that it can happen to you at any time in any area. Crime is rife. The second thing is, people tend to think, and it's actually been proven, that the minute they're close to their home base or close to their office or close to where they are going, they kind of relax and think the trip is over. The trip is not over until you're safely inside. So when you're driving to your house, keep a lookout for cars behind you. See if anybody's following you. Maybe do an exercise. Drive past your driveway, turn around at another location and drive back before you go to your gate. Therefore, if anybody follows you, they would have to turn around as well, and that's easier to detect than if you just drive up to your driveway, stop in front of your gate before you push the remote, wait for the gate to open, and then more importantly, as far as counter surveillance is concerned, it's actually very dangerous to live by patterns. If you leave work at the same time, drive the same route the same day, go to the same house every night, over a week, people can know your pattern exactly. Yeah. They can plan an execution with people sitting on the side, waiting, looking like people looking for work. They can have fruit stalls set up and whatever, and they can plan an execution against you. So if you can, change your routes, change your times. Go to work a bit earlier some days. Go to work a bit later some days. Make an arrangement with your boss that you can come in half an hour later on certain days and therefore leave half an hour later, just so that your patterns are not so terribly predictable.
Fantastic. How can we find more of your work, Stan?
Simple. You can go to my website. It's www.ibf, that's India Bravo Foxtrot, USA.info.
Oh, India Bravo Foxtrot.
IBF investigation.
Perfect.
IBF USA.info. That's my website.
I've got it. From IBF Investigations, Stan Bezuidenhout, road safety risk specialist, court expert, and former specialist reservist Class C in the South African Police. Thanks for your time.